Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am back with another review, and that review is of The City of Dusk by Tara Sim, which is the first book in the Dark Gods series. This book was the buddy read for my book club back in May. I only finished it in August, which, to be honest, is not the book's fault at all. I just had a weird reading time the past few months, and yeah. It's whatever. But if you're interested, my book club is of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, and that book club is all about centering adult high fantasy written by women or genderqueer folks. And so if you're interested, the Twitter and the Discord will be linked down below. I sadly cannot tell you what we're currently reading because I'm not exactly sure when this video will go up. So either we're still reading our August book, which is The Final Strife, or we're already in September. And then, I don't know, you just have to go check the Discord which book we're reading, or check the Twitter or whatever. As always, this review will be spoiler free. I will start with a little summary of the book, then get into the more negative things that I thought about the book, and ending with the more positive things. But first, starting with the summary. This is Tara Sim's adult fantasy debut, and I actually was quite hesitant to pick it up because I had only ever read one other book by Tara Sim, and I DNF'd that one because I just didn't like it. And also, this is one of those adult fantasy books that's kind of really hard to summarize. Because of that, it's kind of really hard to go into the book kind of already having an expectation of what it's about. But basically, you have like 4 different realms. You have life, death, light, and darkness, and all of them converge within the city, which is the City of Dusk. You have 4 different families who can wield the powers of the different realms, and those 4 different families have 4 different heirs. And those 4 heirs are our main characters. Now, long ago, the gods have withdrawn their favor from the city that everyone lives in, and because of that, the city is slowly dying. Our 4 main characters, our 4 heirs, now have to work together, which they're not used to doing. They maybe, you know, aren't necessarily always on the best terms because the families kind of are rivals. But the 4 heirs have to work together to maybe open the city back up to the power of the gods and to save their city and their country. And that's basically, very roughly said, what this book is about. Now, overall, I gave this book 4 stars. I probably, if I had read it at another time, I would have given it 3.5 stars. But this is the first book that I read in August, and if you've been on my channel recently, you will know that July was the absolutely worst reading month I had in a while. So I was just so happy to finally read a book again that I somewhat enjoyed, that I ended up giving it 4 stars. But now we're starting with the negatives anyway, so let me maybe talk about the things that usually would have probably made this more of a 3.5 star read for me. So the positive thing about getting a TBR card is I no longer have to hold up the book I'm talking about constantly. I can just put it here behind me. But anyway, the negative thing, the main thing that I had with this book, and it wasn't necessarily something that actively bothered me, it just was something that kept me from getting into the book more than I could have if this thing had happened or existed, and that is that I found the world building to be quite basic. And I don't mean basic in a sense of not imaginative and not unique, because I do actually think that the world building was quite unique, but the way I would describe it is, in an ideal fantasy book, you don't necessarily need a whole iceberg of world building. But what I want to get, like the feeling I want to get when reading a fantasy book, is that what I'm getting on page is only the tip of the iceberg of world building, and there's just like a massive amount of world building down below. It doesn't matter if the author actually did the world building or not. Someone's like skating outside. It doesn't matter if the author actually did the world building or not. I just want to get the feeling like they did. And with this book, I pretty much got the feeling like what I got was what was there, and not like, you know, there's this wealth of world building underneath that is just there for me to discover. And because of that, the world also somewhat didn't really feel lived in. It just felt like a kind of, I don't know what you call it, but you know, cardboard fronts set up and there's nothing behind that. And that was just something that for me was a little bit of a shame. I mean, I do think that we got a lot of setup, so I hope that continuing on in the series and in the second and third book we'll get a lot more and things will feel a lot more lived in. But I think part of the issue why it felt like that was also because we mostly got scenes, or 90% of the scenes that we got were scenes that were directly related to the plot or to where the plot was leading us. And so yeah, it just, there was something lacking for me, something that, you know, made me feel like the story exists outside of, you know, the frame of the story. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it didn't really feel like there was a before to the story, or it didn't really feel like the characters existed outside of what was directly happening in the story. And so yeah, it just for me was a little bit of a shame, not gonna lie. And I think connected to that, there's also something else that I had a bit of an issue with, and that is that the emotional punch was just missing for me at the very end of the book, especially when it came to a lot of the side characters rather than the main characters. So yeah, I just think that might have also been because I couldn't really get connected to the side characters because they just felt random and like they didn't really exist. It's kind of hard for me to explain, but yeah, that's the main negative thing I had about this book. So now let's move on to the positive things. First of all, I really enjoyed the plot. I think this plot had a decent mystery. You never really knew what was going on. There were a lot of twists and turns that surprised me. I didn't really see it coming who, you know, the villains were, and a lot of stuff that was going on was just very much a surprise to me. I think some of the stuff might have also been a little bit badly set up to the point where it just came out of nowhere, but most of it I think was set up. I just didn't see it. So I really enjoyed the plot, I enjoyed the mystery, I enjoyed the twists. I thought there were quite a few twists for a fantasy novel. Usually you don't get that many twists, aside from, you know, one big betrayal or whatever. But with this one, you really never knew where it was going, if the characters were actually working towards something good or something bad, or maybe something good, but then maybe it might be bad anyway. It was very interesting and constantly kept me on my toes. And then also the big positive thing about this book is definitely the main characters. I really enjoyed the main 4/5 characters. That's actually a thing. There was like one mystery that really was not a surprise to me. That was just a bit like, wow. But I also don't think the author necessarily assumed that people wouldn't guess what was going on there. But anyway, the main 5 POV characters, I really enjoyed them. Like, I did not enjoy them equally. There were definitely 2 that were my favorite. I also really liked their relationship. I really hope this relationship develops further in the future. But I think generally that was the one thing where Tara Sim was really good in setting something up that she didn't directly show on page, and that was the relationships between our main characters and the main heirs of these big families. You really felt like there was history between them. You really got that, you know, they had to work together and they know each other really well. To a certain degree, you know, they really are the only people that know each other. Like, they have this very special place within society. So they kind of are very close to each other, but also their families are rivals, and so they don't necessarily always like each other. Some of them just can't stand each other's guts. Others have actually really close relationships. So yeah, I thought the characters are really well done and really well written. I found their motivations very interesting, because you'd think, since the families are rivals and since the ultimate motivation of the families is power, you'd think the heirs' motivations would be quite similar, you know, towards just helping their families. But actually their motivations were very different. Their characterizations were very different. Like, you had 5 completely different characters from each other. And so yeah, I thought that was really the shining point for Tara Sim. So yeah, just to sum it up, I guess, I think if you're someone who reads primarily for character work and who reads primarily character-focused books, I think this really is a book that I would recommend to you. If you're a fantasy reader who primarily also reads for world building and who is very interested in picking apart world building, I think this book might be more of a book you want to pass on. And so yeah, I think that was it for my review. Tell me in the comments down below if you want to pick up this book or not. If you have already read it, tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to the book club I mentioned at the beginning of the video will be linked down below, so go and check those out. And I hope I'll see you very soon. Bye!